Well, what a session we've had. Finally, we've had a session of cricket. We were wondering when the rain's going to stop playing spoiled sport. But we've had a session with just over 19 overs, revised session timings on day three. But it does look like we will have quite the test match. India have taken the lead. 191 is what they've scored, and they lead by 8 now. Importantly, KL Rahul is there. He stitched together a partnership with Ravindra Jadeja and Rishabh Pant, the only casualty in what was that first session on day three. Fascinating conversation to be had then with VVS Laxman. And it's time to welcome Ian Bell for the first time on this series on our live show on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. I don't know if the England fans would be happier to see Belly here or maybe occupying a position at number 5 or number 6 in what looks like a suspect batting lineup, Belly, but it's good to have you.
And also, my record in the winter wasn't particularly good either. So,
come on.
Yeah.
It shines in comparison to what we see today, surely. But anyway, yeah. It's good to have you in. Let's take you through that. Let's go through that session first up. Lakshman, important little partnership being stitched together now. Are India in the advantage? It seems like the kind of test match where we should be worried about predicting anything.
Yeah, definitely. I think India well ahead at this current moment, even though they lost Rishabh Pant, but 8 runs lead. And I'm sure the way Jadeja is batting and the way KL Rahul has continued his innings from last evening shows that there are more runs to get. And Shardul Thakur is more than capable batsman, and you can also expect useful contribution from Mohammad Shami, probably even from Jasprit Bumrah, and Shiraz also can contribute something. So if they can get a lead of say 80 to 100 runs, then with the kind of batting form the English batsmen have shown in the first innings, India would fancy their chances.
I'm trying to understand what you've made of what you've seen in the last couple of days, Belly, in terms of batting. It seems like when Rahul and Jadeja were batting for the last 20 minutes to half an hour, it seems great for batting. It seems, they're in control and comfortable. We also saw a period of play yesterday where we felt like ball was doing all sorts of things. Rishabh Pant seemed to find it quite hard in the early parts of this session. What have you made of the batting that's been on display and the conditions on offer at Trent Bridge?
Yeah, I mean, it very much is that kind of batting. Certainly in these conditions, when it's overcast, the floodlights are on, and the ball's moving around. I think it's the kind of pitch, again, that you will see wickets in clusters. When you get a partnership, as you said, it looks like things are a little bit easier, but it's never easy for a guy starting on naught. And as a fielding team, you're just, even if there's that partnership, you're constantly just reminding each other. If you get one, that could easily be 2 and 3 together. And as you said, as you get in, you get the pace of it and the movement. The batting becomes a little bit easier. To be fair, I thought India's openers were outstanding. They played really well until obviously we got that wicket just before lunch with Rohit taking on the short ball. It didn't look like we were going to get a wicket really, and then that allowed us then, like I said, with a new batsman there and the England guys bowled really well. But really impressed again, I thought, as we said there, that little partnership at the end. Jadeja came in and technically as well played really well, played really late, looked solid in defence, and England are going to have to work hard to break this partnership.
How good is Rahul looking, Lakshman? This seems to be the innings of vital importance.
Yeah, and as I mentioned yesterday also, Rana, that this innings can be a breakthrough innings, and innings of great importance, keeping in mind his career, but someone who has been out of favor in test match cricket while he's been consistently doing well in white ball cricket, just to show that kind of discipline, the hunger is there, and his body language shows that desire to prove himself back at the highest level in test match format. And it's not about proving his critics, it's more about proving to himself that he belongs here and has earned this spot as a top order batsman. But he also realizes that, as Belly rightly mentioned, that keeping in mind the team's fortune, it's important for an established batsman like himself to continue this form and convert this half century into a big 100, and then eventually the team will be in a very formidable position. But he deserves 100, because the application, the technique he displayed, and at the same time, whenever the opportunity arises, the kind of drives he threw the middle of the cover region, square of the region on the offside, shows that the balance which you require to be successful as an opener in England is there, and Rahul is every bit of class. He's a batsman who is in great form, great touch, and I'm sure that he'll capitalize on that.
Belly, anything that stands out for you on what you've seen of KL Rahul?
Yeah, I mean, as VVS just said, I mean, I love watching him play in all formats of the game. He's a class player. One thing that I love that he's done so well so far is how he's left the ball. You have to own the top of off stump, as we say over here. You've got to be disciplined. You know, the ball's going to move sideways, but if you can own that top of off stump, off the front and back foot, you've got a good chance. And then, as Vivius just said there, I mean, his offside play has been, you know, as good as it can be. His drives, his back foot punches are brilliant. And he's, like I said, such a nice player to watch. But the way he's left the ball, I would have thought that's a real frustration for the England bowlers, because they've bowled quite nice areas to him. And like I said, you know, you want players playing in that fourth stump, fifth stump channel, not knowing they're off stump. And I think he's owned that really well.
I was observing some observation on social media, as well as some of the writing we've seen on ESPN. Written for Laxman. Any observations on whether there's a significant change in technique? Is the backlift a bit lower than what it was? That's what I seem to read of some of the writing that I'm seeing. Anything that you've observed that shows a difference from KL Rahul from a few years back in Test cricket to what you're seeing in this innings?
I think difference in his approach and mindset. If you remember, he got 100, I think, at Oval.
Yes.
And when you saw him back even in Australia in 2018, he just didn't know how to approach a test innings, because he was just in that mental space where to go over aggressive, because he was a stroke player and he's had a lot of success as an aggressive opener also in white ball cricket. I think he's got his game plan right now, you know, and once you have everything sorted out, that clarity is there in your mind, automatically that translates into your body language, and that also helps you in being very decisive. You know, because if you're cluttered in your mind, then you're always poking at the balls which you're supposed to leave. Whereas it's very clear, he understands that for me to score runs in England, especially against quality bowling lineup, which England has at their disposal, and also in these conditions where it will be friendly to the fast bowlers, I have to be ready to leave a lot of deliveries. That means I have to show patience, but at the same time, I have my scoring areas. So I think it's much more organized compared to when you saw him play last time Test match cricket, and that actually led to his downfall in Test match cricket, because of which he lost his spot.
Just the one wicket to fall then in that session. Rishabh Pant. Now, what happened there, Veli, was we know that they were on and off for a while. There would have been some amount of water that had actually gotten on to the surface, during that early part of the session. Pant seemed to get one that seemed to hold. What happened on that wicket?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's actually quite nice for the bowlers, isn't it? They can stay fresh, they can keep coming on and off and prolong those spells. But I think we know with Rashid Pant, he's going to play his way, and he's encouraged to play his way. And you don't want him to change. You don't want him just to start surviving. For me, he just got a little bit out ahead of himself, and that pit, and it just stuck in the pitch a little bit longer. If he'd have played that a little bit later and maybe allow it to come a bit longer, he'd have hit that along the floor. But again, I mean, for me, it's just box office. I love watching him play. As soon as he walks out into the middle, everything stops, and we all sit around and watch him. That is for sure. But yeah, it just looked like on that contact, he just got his hands a bit far out there. And as it does in England, sometimes it can just stay in the pitch or just do a little bit from that length. And again, credit to England, they had a nice field set, and it was a really nice challenge. You know, I think Anderson v Pant is a real one to look forward to these 5 Test matches.
Yeah, I mean, come on. He steps out when the rain starts to come down and wants to hit Anderson through mid-off and cover. I've decided not to overcomplicate Rishabh Pant only. Even on the show, we won't analyze it too much. We'll sit back and enjoy it. That's what Pant is there for. Now, on England's bowling, though, Veli, have they asked enough questions of India in this session? I'm hearing the commentary in general on, of course, they went in with just the seam options. They didn't play Jack Leach. Andrew Strauss was quite critical of that move. There's a sameness to the bowling attack, etc., etc. Have they asked enough questions? Are they looking like a bowling attack with enough teeth for you?
I think in these conditions, with what we've got at the moment and the weather around, I think it's okay. You get away with it. I'm the same. 5 days. I mean, with the last Test match we lost to New Zealand, we didn't play a spinner either, which we should have done. So I like to see a spinner in the side for absolute balance. For me, yeah, we did okay. I think the first bit of bowling up front with the new ball, we may have been a little bit wide, but I don't think you can argue with the bowlers. I think they've challenged India as much as they can, and got to give credit to India, especially Rahul and the way that the guys got stuck in. You can easily get a good ball. I think Kohli got a good delivery. You can get that up front early in your innings. That's possible. But credit to India. I think they've fought really hard. And I think VVS said there, if you can get 70, 80 lead, I think with a batting unit like England under pressure, that could be a huge lead in this Test match.
I mean, they're not out of it by any stretch, VVS. The lead is only 8. But outside of that spell from Anderson yesterday, it looks like India have been more or less in control. This 4-man attack, one of them being Sam Curran, is it not looking as potent as England would like?
Yeah, because at the moment, the department for England which is struggling is batting. And
Hmm.
that's why probably they've gone with that extra batsman instead of an extra bowler. And that's something which is a very defensive and a negative approach, especially keeping in mind that this is the first test match of a five-test match series. I would have probably loved to see Jack Leach, and you got Sam Curran who's batting at number 8. He's more than handy batsman. So he should be probably batting at number 7, and Butler should be batting at number 6. Having said that, I think they overly depend on Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad.
Hmm.
And we saw that magical spell from Jimmy just before the game was stopped last evening. And I think while Robinson bowled well, I just feel that the conditions or the way Root has used Sam Curran was probably not ideal, because he's someone who swings the ball, and the early you get him to bowl, he will have and create more chances than probably when he's actually bowled in this inning so far. Because Stuart Broad and Robinson are more hit the deck bowler, whereas
Hmm.
Sam Curran, like Jimmy Anderson, loves to swing the ball, and that's when he can get more wickets. So I just feel the way Root has handled Sam Curran was not ideal.
Just give me a quick comment on
Uh,
your thoughts on the selection, Belly, because you also predicted Jack Leach or wanted Jack Leach in your 11 would be previewed this test match. Does it tend to put a little more pressure on your frontline seamers when you know it's only the four of us?
Look, I think in these conditions you can get away with it. We know that there's a lot of weather around, so you might not play the 5 days. The lights are on; it's perfect for seeing. But I don't think that works over a long period of time. We've got 5 Test matches, and again in August, generally, touch wood, I know it's England, but the sun normally is out. Look as well, and I hear a lot about balance of the side and stuff. But there is a guy called Moeen Ali playing in the 100 at the moment, who is a genuine all-rounder and can fill that position at number 7 and be the spinner. And he's got a fantastic record against India at home. Not as good in India, but he's got a great record against India. So I think there are people in England that could balance this side up a little bit better. Look, and they've got to make a decision on who the frontline spinner is going forward, not just for
Yeah.
this series, but the next few years. But as I said, I keep hearing a lot about balance and how do we get a spinner in. But like I said, I look at Moeen Ali and I think, well, there you go. There's a guy that can bat 6, 7, 8. And like I said, he bowls wicket-taking balls. He's an attacking option. We saw in the wind when he did play the Test match. He bowled some absolute beautiful deliveries to Kohli with drift and spin. So he's an attacking option. So I do think we have that spin option, and it doesn't have to be one-dimensional, all about seam.
All right, fair enough. Now, that's where the game stands at lunch on day 3. We do have a lot of cricket to be played, and you never know what happens in the first few minutes of the next session, as we saw yesterday. So we'll keep this in the balance for now. We'll continue conversation on the match at tea time. But let's spend a little time here with VVS Laxman and Ian Bell, two prolific batters in the purest form of the game, and just discuss something which I think is on all our minds. It's not a conversation you haven't heard before, but we'll try and see if there's more to it than meets the eye. Even as Jimmy Anderson is 39 years old, he seems far from done. We're going to try and understand what it takes to face Anderson. How do you face Anderson? How do you try and succeed against him, especially in these sorts of conditions where he's so good? Maybe as you played him enough. Now, what's your one sort of first thing that you have to tell a young batter, or you tell even an experienced batter, you're going to England to play Jimmy Anderson? What do you keep in mind?
First and foremost, always look for a full ball, because very rare you see Jimmy Anderson bowling short pitch deliveries. In fact, I have never ever played a bouncer from Jimmy Anderson in the Test series in 2011. Number two, watch his wrist very, very closely, because he's got great wrist, and the way he uses the crease, the way he uses the wrist to, get the seam to move and allow the ball to deviate both sides of the wicket. Is been exceptional as far as the skill set is concerned. But the dismissal of Pujara and Virat Kohli last evenings is what I always thought is special about Jimmy Anderson, because he got me in both Test matches in 2011, first at Trent Bridge and then at Oval. Because when he's coming wide of the crease and when you closely follow his wrist position and the seam of the ball, you think that the ball is going to come in. And as a batsman, you're always looking to play for that line, and always cover that swing. But while his wrist doesn't change, but there's a lot of deviation once the ball lands, or just it holds its length and line, and that's when a batsman lands in trouble, or find himself in no man's land. So I think that is the dangerous ability of Jimmy Anderson, the ability to deceive the batsman and get those outside edges, or in my case, I was bowled on both those occasions. And when I look back at those dismissal,
Yeah.
I felt that having that front foot stride, having the body weight transfer and looking to play with the full face of the bat back towards the bowler is very critical. Because whenever you don't know what's going to happen off the wicket, you always look to save your pads, you always look to save your wickets. And if the ball deviates, then if you offer a present a full face of the bat, you're always going to miss the outside edge. But if you're always playing for the ball which is going to go out, then you're always creating that bat and pad gap, or you'll become a big LBW candidate.
Just tell me, take us through more of what you learned when you faced him, VVS. Those dismissals that you talk about. So what was the hardest part about technically adjusting to Anderson in particular? And did that also work against all the England bowlers at the time, or did you have to do something else for Broad, something else for another bowler, and again do something else for Anderson? Is that another challenge as well of just facing up only to Jimmy, and whether that works for everybody in the opposition?
Yeah, well, in 2011, they had four bowlers. Jimmy was out and out swing bowler. Stuart Broad was someone who's more hit the deck bowler. Bresnan played in that series. He was also very similar to Stuart Broad, who used to hit the deck and get that extra bounce off the wicket. And Tremblay played, I think, in a couple of test matches. Whereas, Jimmy is just a class bowler. I mean, I've never faced a fast bowler. Probably Dale Steyn comes close to him. But Dale had the ability to swing the ball, but not so much off the wicket, but more in the air. But Jimmy has the ability to swing the ball in the air and then get that lateral movement or the seam movement off the surface. You face a lot of bowlers who had that leg cutter, if I may say, like someone like Freddie Flintoff had that leg cutter going. But the way Jimmy Anderson deceives the batsman, and that's purely because of his wrist position. Because a lot of bowlers, when they hold the ball, and as a batsman, you take the cues or you find the cues from watching the wrist and the seam position closely, you find that if suppose they are getting the ball to come in, it's always going to either hold the line or just deviate a little bit. Whereas with Jimmy Anderson, with the same wrist position and the seam position, it almost looks that the ball is coming in the air, but and because of that wobble seam, it eventually leaves the batsman and troubles the batsman and induces that outside edge, and that's why he's such a dangerous bowler to face.
I'm going to come to that wobble seam in just a second, but let's go to Ian Bell as well. Did he have the same artistry in the nets as he does in the games? Did that in any way make you more, you could say, wiser perhaps on how to face Jimmy Anderson, Belly, and all the time that you spent with him?
Yeah, and there's a few good clashes in county cricket as well. But generally, again, one of the better ways is be at the non-strikers end and face the guy at the other end is probably one of the better ways. But look, he has got great skill, and he's one of those. He's a great competitor, but also his skill set. I think early in his career, very much swing bowler. Now he's got the craft of this wobble seam ball. And when you play a lot of county cricket now, certainly in the last few years, guys have gone away from trying to swing the ball. They've actually gone to, again, these wobble, scrambled seams where the ball is seaming and actually attacking the stumps, making you play that, that fourth stump, off stump line and not sure. And like VVS has said, I mean, if I was to play Jimmy, it would be more about hitting straight, hitting back to the stumps mid-on, play for the balls coming in. And actually the outswinger, I'm not too concerned as much in the channel and the one that's going away from me, but really playing for the ball that's going to come back in. And I remember when we were under 19s and Jimmy came into the setup, he was a big in-swing bowler. He didn't really have an outswinger. So I think, as VVS has said, his wrist position is so good, and he's learned from that same position where he went in is to be able to go out now. And this is, I mean, we're seeing a guy at the top of his game with an amazing skill set of how to bowl in English conditions. But, for me, again, like I said, to playing him, I felt if I play him really straight and actually back to sort of mid-on and the stumps, I'm not too worried what's going on the outside edge.
Yeah, just to add on to what Belly is saying, Ronak, you talked about wrist position. Like if you see both the dismissals of Pujara and Virat Kohli, the wrist position was almost that the ball is going to come into the right hander.
Yes.
Okay, but the moment it lands, it actually straightens or deviates a lot more. Like in the case of Pujara, I thought it deviated a lot more than what it did for Virat Kohli. And that's why a batsman is almost forced to play at the ball. But the two things which you can learn from those two dismissals. Number one, you see Pujara's front foot. Pujara's front foot was very similar to what I had in 2011. And I feel when I introspected at those two dismissals, I felt that if I had even a short stride going forward and there is a gap between both my legs, automatically my body weight will be transferred forward, which allows my bat to be just in front of my pad. But because Pujara's front foot was stranded on the crease, the bat was behind his front leg, because of which he's just hanging the bat instead of having full control of the bat. That's why the bat was vertical, and that's why it's very easy for the outside edge to be induced. And when you saw Virat Kohli, I think the guard he took was on the middle stump, and by the time he shuffled, his right leg was almost on the off stump. So, in fact, when you see those replays of Virat Kohli's dismissal, his left leg was on the fourth stump, and then because of which he was forced to open his bat face. So, I think what we can learn is, number one, always stand on the middle stump and take your front foot not across but towards the off stump, and take a long stride forward, and always make sure that your bat is full faced, you're present in the full face, and the bat is in front of the pad, and never look to open the face of the bat, because once you do that, you're playing with only half of your bat face, and also there will be a bat and pad gap created if the ball nips back in. And these are the two learnings which the Indian batsman can take from those two dismissals.
Yes, this is quite fascinating. The wobble seam is the other thing I want to sort of discuss. And I was chatting with Steve Harmison on this, and he said Broad and Anderson have been using it for a while now. Belly, you mentioned other bowlers in English cricket that are now resorting to it. Now, our traditional wisdom is that if the seam is wobbled, it doesn't quite swing. If you wanted to swing, the seam has to be erect. That's how you get the ball to move, and that you're expecting that ball to therefore just seam. Has Anderson in some way found a way now to actually get that wobble seam ball to swing? Or is that now something that is happening from a lot of bowlers?
Look, I think it sounds nice. I think there's a lot of natural variation when it comes out as a wobble seam. I think with the overhead and the humidity and the conditions, there's enough happening. I think that's the beauty of the wobble seam, is I think that whether it's Broad and Anderson, they'll let that go. They're not quite sure whether that's going to go in or out. I think that's the nice thing, but they're just hitting an area. And that's the hardest thing as a batsman, is, as we said, they're drawing you into that fourth stump line, playing towards extra cover rather than playing it back towards the stumps. And that's where they're challenging you. And I remember, like I said, probably starting county cricket, there was a lot of outswing bowlers was the common sort of, that's what everyone was trying to do. But if you look at county cricket now, a lot of the bowlers, a bit like Robinson is a prime example of what's in county cricket now. It's actually running in and attacking the stumps. Can you seam the ball back into the stumps and bring in LBW bowled, and then the one that just straightens or doesn't nip back, it brings in the outside edge. So I would say in county cricket in particular, there's not a lot of swing bowlers as much now as there was. It's all about wobble seam and, like I said, attacking the stumps, looking at the bowl and then the thin.
This is a fascinating conversation. I think to just round it off on a lighter note, I'd love to ask Ian Bell whether Jimmy Anderson ever offered advice on how to face him. If there were other swing bowlers around the world to line up against, were there batters in county cricket that had the better of him more often than others that used to annoy Jimmy? You think he's a guy you can annoy very much. Yeah.
Plenty that could annoy him. I mean, that's the one thing that was impressive about Jimmy at the moment, because if I was to play Jimmy now, he's a real battler and a scrap. He likes to get in the contest, but sometimes, certainly in his early days, he could cross that line a bit, and then he starts to lose what his good is his control and that. So if I was batting unit, if you can just get him wound up a little bit, he tries a bit too hard, then he loses that thing. But now he's a master of in the experience. He just keeps his calm, he keeps his control now. And that was the time when Jimmy, like I said, younger time, would just try a bit too hard. But now, like I said, he's learned to stay in that competing, but he's not stepping over the line, and he doesn't lose his skill set when he's in the contest. So there was plenty of batters, certainly the ones that played amiss to him a lot, and there's certainly a few English county players who have copped a bit of stick from Jimmy over the last 20 years, that's for sure.
Laxman, from that fine team that you played in, I know that Rahul has said something similar about Jimmy Anderson, that he was always in your face. He almost wound you as a batter, so you had to try and wind him up. Now, I don't know if the older, more mature Jimmy Anderson reacts differently. I mean, he's been reverse swept by Rishabh Pant, for God's sake. I don't think you'd expect that. But tell me more about the other batters that you played in that side, whether they had perhaps a different way of playing Jimmy, Sachin or Viru or the rest.
Well, Viru always had a different way of playing any bowler. But I think all the batsmen, in fact, we were discussing in our batting meeting also, about being wary of that leg cutter. I call it as a leg cutter because the ball which comes into the right-hander in the air and then when it pitches it goes away is something which is special about Jimmy Anderson. So all of us discussed that we are going to play with the full face of the bat, hitting back towards long off back to the umpire, and not looking to play through the extra cover region until unless it's absolutely overpitched. But also Belly makes a very fascinating point, about the kind of maturity you see in Jimmy Anderson's bowling, and that's been the marked difference, because now you don't very often see Jimmy Anderson getting frustrated or losing patience, and also he realizes, and that's the advantage of playing county cricket, because I was lucky to play with Glenn Chappell, who I felt was an outstanding fast bowler, and in county cricket, when you play so many back-to-back matches, you know when to attack and when to be on the defensive where you're restricting the flow of runs. And yesterday we saw that. It was a classical example when in the first hour, while there was not too much of help off the surface, he was bowling on the fourth stump outside the off-stump line. And the moment he saw that the ball was swinging, suddenly he changed his line, it changed his length. Very, very seldom does it change his length, but more the line. So I think we also realized that he was patient. And when a top quality bowler like a Jimmy Anderson, Dale Steyn, Wasim Akram, Glenn McGrath, Ambrose, I was privileged to have played with some of the greats. When they are patient, when they are not desperate, as a batsman, you also have to be patient. But if you're trying to be restless, if you're trying to, push or counter attack, then you're always going to get out. And that's what we realized even with Jimmy Anderson in 2011, that he was executing his plan, but he was never flustered if he was not going to get reward for that plan. And that was his greatness.
Well, he continues to just build on his greatness. The great James Anderson, level now with Anil Kumble at 619. He's already the game's most prolific wicket taker in Test cricket. Needs just one more. Who's to say it's not going to come in this session? So let's get back to it. Belly, from what you've seen, what sort of lead do you think could have a big impact in the way this Test match is going? It seems like even a 50-60 run lead would be very handy. What kind of lead could have a big difference here?
Oh yeah, anything over 60. If India could sort of edge up to nearly 100, I think that would put a lot of pressure on England. I think the bowling in this Test match so far has been outstanding from both parties, both teams. It's really put a lot of pressure on probably some batting units that are trying to find their feet. Certainly the English side are under a bit of pressure. But yeah, credit to all the bowlers. So again, with the conditions, I think the forecast is very much the same for the next 3 days. So it's going to be in the bowlers' favour. So anything over 60 to 100, I think India will be in the box seats.
You think even if a wicket or two falls, VVS, that KL Rahul, this is the other beauty of him, isn't it? That if he's set, he's one of those players that you wouldn't mind batting with the tail. He's got the shots and whatnot. Quite an interesting session lined up ahead.
Yeah, I think so. But also, while you don't want a batsman to think about his milestone, I just hope that this partnership with Jadeja continues, and then whenever Shardul Thakur comes in, he will support KL Rahul, and that's what KL Rahul would probably want from this session to get his milestone, because he's been waiting patiently for this opportunity. But if at all he ends up batting with the tail, then he can prepare for the IPL, which is going to happen in Dubai. And we know what kind of shots he can play all around the wicket, and also he'll have the license to do that. And on this surface, I think he can hit those big shots. But I think the second new ball also will be very important. It's due in just some overs, and I think if they can get through that period, and get through that spell from Jimmy Anderson, I'm sure India can get to a lead of 80-90, and that will put them in a very formidable position.
This seems to be set up for a wonderful session. Let's hope the weather stays clear. It's also a slightly long session, so do catch us with revised session timings wherever you are. You can follow that on ESPN.com as well as our social handles. And we'll be back with VVS, Laxman and Ian Bell. Fascinating conversation, gentlemen. Thank you very much, not just on the game, but on this thing which, it never gets old. How do you face Jimmy Anderson? Jimmy Anderson never gets old. So it's just one of those great conversations that we can have in Test cricket over and over again. Do join us then at tea time. We'll see where this Test match is placed.